provide an update on the potential early childhood development millage. So we had a presentation already within the board packet. Potential early childhood development millage. So we had a presentation already within the board packet. Oh, my poor colleagues, they like hearing me talk so much. Now you get to hear it 3 times. Look at that. Wow. My poor colleagues. Oh, no.
Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3.
Okay. That didn't echo Administrator Catlin, so we got our fingers crossed. Council has just reminded me to just recognize for the record, Commissioner Morales has joined the session a bit ago at this point. But anyway, so I'm going to steer us back to early childhood development millage update. So again, we received the previous presentation materials. We had some discussion about this last time. We had additional dialogue with our partners from the Michigan Transformation Collective, board leadership, and sort of talked through some potentials of, some general buckets of funding recommendations, potential partnerships that could help us steer funding if the voters do support moving forward with a childcare development millage. Again, just from the materials they shared with us, we know it's very burdensome on families, particularly we're a federally recognized childcare desert, especially for kids, 0 to 2. Families are spending more on childcare than they should be spending on housing, 38% of their income. They quote here for us that tuition ranging between 10,400 to 12,700 a year for childcare. The other thing about childcare workers is that they are some of the lowest paid workers. Those workers then will also be predominantly female. It's also an additional equity issue for us to consider. Economic impact estimating that 2.8 billion annually of economic losses due to inadequate childcare supply. So again, identifying more than 85%, I believe it was, of households identifying that childcare was somewhat or very difficult to find. And so that is really a systemic failure that's occurring, and we have to consider if we have a role collectively to solve that. And so one way is to put this proposal before the voters of the county, looking at potentially up to a 0.5 mil for 10 years to help support this work. There's a state wage pilot that's also working to identify if wage subsidy helps to retain folks in childcare employment, if that helps to retain or recruit teachers. But that pilot's limited in nature. It only, I believe, I think it was funded 30 teachers within Kalamazoo County. So that's just a drop. But we'll have some data to help us understand those impacts. Today also, you know, that wage threshold right now is pretty low. The average wage, and that includes, you know, from low to high wage earners, but the average is just a little over $14 an hour. There are some being paid way below that. There are some childcare workers that are making below the minimum wage for their work. And next year, January 1st, the minimum wage goes to $15 an hour in the state. And so that puts additional pressure. So, you know, I inquired in the Transformation Collective is assisting us in just getting some cost estimates of, I mean, what would it look like for childcare workers to make a living wage in the community? We know that that would take significant resourcing that we won't be able to meet, but I do want us to understand how large the hole is that we're really looking at, so that we have adequate funding for livable wages for childcare workers in the community. So it's just a brief update where we're at with that. If there are any questions, we also have partners with us in the audience. If there's things that Administration Vice Chair I cannot speak to on it, or we'll just bring this up a future meeting when we consider whether it moves forward. Commissioner Gissler.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. One, what is our estimated annual budget this year? I'm sure it's still in flux, but it's got to be kind of known to a certain extent. We can round it off. And the $500,000 per year will generate how much? Between 4 and 5 million? So for a 10-year period, that'd be $40 to $50 million.
Vice Chair would the human calculator would like to take that for you. He would, yes.
$500,000 would, right now, it generates just under $5 million a year. With taxable growth within a year or two, it'll be just over $5 million a year. So we're right at that $5 million threshold right now for $500,000. Our annual budget, this is very complicated. I was looking at Kevin and we we're both kind of having the same thoughts in our head. I could see it. Well, if you count the road commission, the ISK, all these different airport boards, all these boards that we appoint to, we're approaching $500 million annually in expenditures, and with Metro Transit as well. With just our general operating funds and the funds within the county, I think we're getting close to 100, like 98 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I mean, you see the Lansing lobbyists talking to legislators in Lansing, and they're doing. Counties have way more say in how we appropriate tax dollars than any. That's just my 2 cents. But
Do you have any other questions? Commissioner Ray.
Yeah, I think my question is just more about the logistics of how the money will be spent. Have those things been worked out, or are we just still kind of talking baseline? I guess I'm interested in how the funding will support families who are not qualifying for assistance with childcare costs and just ensuring that there's something in there. I know like every time I have a conversation about this or here, to me, it just sounds like we're looking to help providers and not necessarily, I mean, families benefit, but we're not really looking at the full picture as it relates to families.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And wage subsidy, as I spent most of my time talking about, is part of it. And ultimately, sort of how we solidify what we want to do with the resources is sort of, oh, there's some room that's open, but there are recommendations that we've received from the Child Care Collective. So teacher wages, so this would be annual allocation. These are just, again, proposals of about $1 million. That would equate to about a $275 monthly stipend. Then there's child care provider quality and sustainability work, $1 million that potentially could support centers that serve primarily children 0 to 3 that qualify for CCDF funded childcare. That's about 400 children. I don't know the acronym. Do you want to? It's just say the federal child care subsidies. Thank you. About 100,000 within that pot as well for administrative functions to do that. Then lowering costs for families, about 1.5 million, would support small businesses to enroll in TriShare. So families that are making between that 200 to 400 of the federal poverty line. $500,000 for childcare voucher program. And that would fund approximately 100 children. And these again are just proposals from the coalition. They're not firm what we necessarily have to move forward with. But that would support approximately 100 kids. And then 150,000 for a child care enrollment specialist. And then some other data and administrative supports as well. So it does try to take approach, through both increasing the supply of available childcare and the wages those workers make so they stay, and then helping families both connect with TriShare supports or through vouchers.
So the only thing that I really heard was the voucher.
And try. Will you turn your mic on so they can hear your question?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the TriShare supports, we know that there are folks in the community that would qualify for TriShare subsidy, but their employer isn't engaged in it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for those questions. Are there others? Vice Chair.
Just a comment, the TriShare portion of this, as well as the vouchers, are my favorite two portions of this, because we need to be getting more businesses involved in the TriShare program. It's put on by the state as both an economic mobility sort of engine, as well as a place where more and more people can enter the workforce. So those two things, I think I'm in strong alignment with, the voucher program and the TriShare stuff. The rest of this, we can get into detail as we put this millage proposal, discuss it further, but I'm going to be pushing hard for the expansion of the small businesses to participate in TriShare, because you're leveraging state money. So we're using our tax dollars and then leveraging it with state dollars. So we're getting more bang for our buck. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, which reminds me I needed to also make sure to highlight the teacher wage component also includes a state match for the resources that we spend on that. And one of the struggles, if we help families better be able to afford childcare, it's just not available in the community. So what we see often happen with like housing vouchers, a person may hold a voucher and there just isn't a place to use it, right? So that's the benefit of supporting the wage boost, is because it draws down, this is a 2-to-1 state match. So this is again a pilot that goes through next year. That drawdown would be available. Now, whether that match would continue on beyond that, that's not solidified yet. But at this point, that would be a component. Right? Any other questions? Commissioner Ray.
Thank you. Just one. So where do we access the information that you just read off? I don't see it in the packet.
Yeah. I will share that. This is just a recommendation we talked through a bit at board leadership. But again, the Transformation Collective wants us to engage in dialogue about what we're comfortable with. So I'll share this as a general concept, and then we'll talk through more, like ultimately if we take it to the voters, if they support it, then what we want to do. With the
Okay.
resources.
And then are they still looking to get it on the ballot for the special election, or no?
They're looking at the August cycle.
Okay, thank you.
Good questions. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. I think I've covered the things I need to for now. Appreciate our collaborators on the Transformation Collective. And then as the cost study is being done, when that information comes forward too, I'll share with the commission as well. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take us now to item 6. We're going to talk through the housing corridor study, and we'll welcome Ryan Kilpatrick from Flywheel Community Development Services. So the city of Kalamazoo received a much longer presentation on this corridor study that I encourage folks to take time and watch. I've gotten to hear this a bit at the supervisors meeting. I find it really interesting, and I welcome Mr. Kilpatrick today to share with our board what we've learned from this study. Welcome to you.
All right, great. Thank you for your time. There's a lot of information to cover, and I'm going to try to move through it relatively quickly. I think you have the packet, so we won't read all of the content out loud, but I am excited to be able to share the data with you. Broadly, what we tried to do with this study is first acknowledge the Upjohn Institute's study in 2025 of the overall amount of housing that's needed countywide. And this study is designed to identify all of the really high leverage opportunities that are available across Kalamazoo County, recognizing that each local unit of government is responsible for their own land use plan, the master plan, zoning ordinance. So we're not trying to decide anything for local units of government, but rather identify where are there big opportunities with access to infrastructure. So the Upjohn Institute identified roughly a need for 7,800 additional housing units over the next 5 years, with likely a need for 15,000 units by 2050. And if we're going to add that many housing units, having some semblance of a plan for where do they go and how do we fund those units? Are they private sector market rate? Are they affordable, subsidized? Is it some mix of the two? We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the first thing I wanted to do is ground us in a set of core principles, which are making sure that we're creating options for everybody. So we're going to talk a little bit about demographics. We're going to talk about affordability, the need for housing at all price points, as well as all ages, wages, and life stages. Making smart investments. You all, I think, are leading the state of Michigan in terms of the way you are investing in housing with county dollars. Using those dollars as efficiently as possible is really important. Ensuring that we're creating meaningful green spaces. So that means both preserving rural areas and creating great parks and recreational amenities within more urbanized and suburban areas will be important. Vibrant places, so connectivity and proximity to small Main Street style village centers, as well as retail, schools, libraries, all of those things are really important. Making sure that all the decision-making is locally driven so that this isn't top down, but bottoms up. And then lastly, a recognition that we have a shared responsibility across the county where each municipality is contributing something alongside of the investments that the county is making. So with that said, One of the things that's really important to acknowledge right now in this moment, and this is happening across the United States, is we have this major demographic shift that's happening. And so while much of our land use policy over the last 50 or 75 years has been rooted in the idea that a majority of households are families with children, what we're actually seeing is about 2/3 of all households are either single adults with no kids at home or couples with no kids at home. And Kalamazoo County is relatively indicative of that. 63% of all households are either singles or couples with no kids at home. And yet what we're finding is a significant amount of the housing that is available or being planned for is large lot single family homes that are relatively expensive compared to what people can afford in the community. And frankly, compared to the household sizes that we're seeing. Now, that doesn't undermine or negate the importance and the need for more single family homes on significant lots. About half of the market still wants that, a suburban product on a larger lot in a single family home. But the other half of the market, the National Association of Realtors does a study every year. They found that 53 to 56% of home buyers are looking for smaller homes in more walkable neighborhoods that are close to amenities. And what we also find is that in Kalamazoo County, this was a study done by the University of Michigan a couple of years ago, only 9% of current residents in the county live within one of those walkable neighborhoods, and only 3.6% of the land area is planned or zoned for that type of walkability. Now, again, remember that about half of the market, right? So the other 44% of households want more suburban and more rural environments. And so those are important things to remember that we need to continue to plan for. But we already do a really good job of that for the most part, right? That's the product type that's actually continuing to be produced. It's that 56% that people want and frankly is in short supply. And one of the things that we know about local economics is that when you have a thing that a lot of people want, but there isn't very much of, price goes up, right? And so what we want to be able to do is create more opportunity for the kinds of housing that people are asking for in the places where local units of government say it's appropriate. So I want to just harp on this issue for just a second, because creating more compact neighborhood development acts in service to rural preservation. So our current land use pattern generally requires us to sprawl out into open spaces, farms, fields, and forests, because we're extending infrastructure out into those places in order to provide more single-family subdivisions. That's okay in some instances, but if all of the next 15,000 housing units that get created are out in those rural spaces, what we're going to end up doing is undermining what makes those places attractive to people, right? More often than I can count, I have folks in rural townships tell me, we moved out here to get away from the urban environment. We moved into this township because we didn't want to be in a cookie cutter subdivision, or we didn't want to be in an urban neighborhood. And so protecting those places is part of the plan, while also allowing for more development to occur where we already have infrastructure, where we've already made investments in sewer, water, roads, broadband, electricity, and gas. So this is a comparison between all of the land that is currently available across Kalamazoo County that is vacant and zoned for residential on the left, and all of the land that we've identified on the 56 corridors that exist in Kalamazoo County that are well served by infrastructure and have a significant amount of available land that's either underutilized or vacant. And you can see, we'll talk more about this in a minute, the infrastructure obligation for the status quo pattern of development is dramatically higher than the infrastructure obligation for the places that already have that infrastructure. So what's important to acknowledge is development tends to follow the path of least resistance. In other words, developers go where it's easy to go. So when we make it easy to develop in the townships or in rural areas, that's where people will develop. When we make it easy to develop where we already have infrastructure, that's where people will develop. Now, market economics are also an important thing, but we can work with that, right? So what's important to acknowledge is in Kalamazoo County, we worked closely with the Kalamazoo County Road Commission. We talked to the City of Kalamazoo Engineering Department to really understand what are we currently investing on a per lane mile basis to build new roads, to maintain the roads that we have, to understand what does it cost to actually build and maintain the infrastructure that we have. What we found is on average right now, it costs $120,000 per 78 feet of road frontage to build a new road with sewer and water underneath. And so that means every time we build a new single family subdivision with 78-foot wide lots or wider, we're requiring a baseline expense of $120,000 in order to serve that home with sewer and water. Right now, if they're on well and septic, it's a different story. That's a different cost. But when we're extending new infrastructure out into suburban and rural areas, know that that's the cost of infrastructure. And generally speaking, when we put a single family house on one of those lots, if it averages around $450,000 in overall value, it's going to produce around $722 in local tax to pay for that infrastructure. Whereas if we put 3 homes on the same lot, it would produce $516 per home, meaning about $1,548 for 3 on the same lot. And we'll talk about how that math works in just a second. So currently, status quo, we're starting to push development out to the periphery. This is going to happen more and more. Average density is going to be about 1.7 acres per residential dwelling unit, but there's lots of land in Kalamazoo County. So we're not in any jeopardy of consuming all of that land, but we are going to continue to kind of press out into the outskirts. Sometimes in places where townships are planning for it, sometimes in places where townships are going to say, oh, we're not so interested in that growth. When we look at what Kalamazoo County families can actually afford, it's interesting. In Kalamazoo County, it breaks down fairly evenly. About a quarter of households would not be able to afford any type of new construction, and frankly, likely need a housing voucher or some form of subsidy, no matter what the housing typology. That's about a quarter of all families. Another quarter, or 29%, those little houses that are in the dark blue color, they can afford typically naturally occurring affordable housing, meaning older housing that is in good shape, but hasn't been updated in maybe 15, 20 years. A lot of that older housing stock is naturally affordable to that middle income band, $35,000 to $75,000 a year. They would struggle to afford new construction, but they can afford what already exists if it's a little bit older. We would call it Class B housing, right? Another 22%, those earning $75,000 to $125,000, they can afford new construction. The issue is they can't afford the new single-family house that we tend to build out in suburban subdivisions. What they can afford is multifamily, townhouses, duplexes, fourplexes, right? More compact development. And those are our middle-income households, our teachers, our firefighters, our nurses. The core of our essential service workers are in that class. Generally speaking, they can't afford the cost of a new single-family home, but they can't afford the cost of new multi-unit and attached housing. And then that last quarter, the yellow, that's the quarter of the population that is able to afford brand new single-family construction. And so what's interesting about this is that last quarter tends to already have a house, right? They're already well housed in Kalamazoo County. They bought something already. They're not necessarily looking for something new. When we're trying to find housing for folks in the community, they tend to be in that more middle income category. What's also interesting is this is a breakdown of what we're actually planning and zoning for across Kalamazoo County. So about 73% of the vacant residential land is zoned for that most expensive housing typology. And only 25% is planned or zoned for something that is more attainable to that middle income household. And so again, what we want to be able to do is identify that only 6% of the identified land area in the corridor approach actually needs to be developed that way, right? So on the left is all of the vacant residential land we've got across the county. On the right is the corridor approach. You can see there are 17,000 acres we identified in those corridors. We only need 6% of that land to be activated in order to meet our housing needs for the next 25 years, right? And that's 6% of the land that's already served by sewer, water, and roads. And so what we then did is we dove into that land area and we said, all right, what are the neighborhood typologies that we might want to propose in these places? Now, again, this is up to the local unit of government, whether it's the city of Kalamazoo or Portage, or it's one of our townships. They decide how the land gets used, how it's planned, and how it's zoned. But this is a model for those communities to start to think about. We wanted to propose, what could we do if we did some town centers and village centers? If we did some missing middle and some small lot single family, how could that break down? And so we're illustrating what could those neighborhood types look like. This might be most appropriate in the city of Kalamazoo. Maybe there are a couple of spots in Oshtemo Township or in the city of Portage where this development pattern makes sense. In most places, this is more dense than a lot of communities are going to ask for. But this is actually one of the most economically productive ways to build housing. And again, remember, roughly 56% of households are asking for neighborhood typologies similar to this. This is a village center, right? So this is more your kind of downtown Main Street in a Parchment type of neighborhood. Could also be a city of Portage or maybe a little hamlet in one of our townships. Less dense, but still compact, close together. We're leveraging the infrastructure that's already in place to the max extent possible. Missing middle housing typologies. This is generally the type of housing that sits in between single family homes and big apartment complexes. There aren't a lot of people that love living in a big apartment complex. Generally, they like something that's more intimate, even if they're living in something attached, whether it's senior condominiums or it's young professional housing. They're looking for something where they know the handful of neighbors that they live closest to, and they don't have a long empty corridor that they have to navigate every day. So these are the types of housing that a lot of people are asking for, but it's very difficult to build today. And then lastly, these small lot single family homes. Generally, what is possible in a majority of communities is taking existing single family neighborhoods and saying, you know what, we might want to let a single family homeowner subdivide their lot. Add one more lot if it's on a corner or they have adequate frontage to create 2 lots, and you can build a second single family home in that same neighborhood. These are examples of cottage courtyards, small lot single family homes. These are heavily in demand among empty nesters and young professionals. They tend to be about 25 to 40% less expensive than a traditional large lot single family home, but they still promote home ownership and opportunities for people to invest in their neighborhoods. Now, what's important about all of this is when we're talking about neighborhoods that are more compact, is building neighborhoods with more density just for the sake of density doesn't make any sense. Right? The reason some people want these types of neighborhoods is because they're close in proximity to the things they care about, right? They're in a good school district. They're close to neighborhood shops and services. They can get to the library or the park really easily. They can send their teenage kids out on foot and feel safe letting them walk around the neighborhood and go get something done. Those are the things that people really care about in these neighborhoods. And so what we want to be doing is thinking about what is the potential of these places while also thinking about economic viability and sustainability. So we identified these 56 corridors. Then we started to look at what are the places that have the most potential for additional tax revenue, because what we're probably going to want to do is leverage that revenue to pay for some improvements to infrastructure to make these places great, right? So the first example we took is this is the city of Parchment. It's right along the Kalamazoo River. There's a Save-A-Lot and a dollar store and a post office and a lot of parking, right? Most of that parking isn't getting used 364 days out of the year, if at all. And so currently this is a 4-acre site. There are 0 households on it. It's generating $619,000 in taxable value. We said, what if we made a little village center here? And this isn't just a pretty picture. This is rooted in local market dynamics. So based on the existing planning and zoning tools and incentives that are available in Kalamazoo County, this is possible today, right? We can find developers that are willing to build this today. And the opportunity here is on that same 4 acres, with the same amount of infrastructure that's currently serving that property, we can go from, what was it, $619,000 in taxable value to $14.7 million in taxable value, while simultaneously creating 105 new households. And you all get to help decide how much of that is affordable, how much of it is low income, moderate income, based on the tools that you've created to support local units of government, right? So in partnership with the city of Parchment, they can start to say, hey, we want to make sure 30% of housing units in this neighborhood are affordable to middle income or low income households. And you've done the great work already of creating the tools to allow those kinds of priorities to be enacted. So then we do a taxable value comparison. You can see the difference between taxable value, how much goes to the county previously, or in status quo, $5,600 go to the county. In the future, $135,000 goes to the county every year. Same for the city tax, and our infrastructure cost stays the same. So what we do is we go from a land use pattern that is only generating about 40% of the tax revenue necessary to pay for the infrastructure to a land use pattern that's generating 1,500% of the taxable value necessary to pay for the infrastructure. So I'm going to go through a couple more really quickly, and then I promise to wrap and give you time for questions. This is the old Pavilion Mall, right next to Target. Don't worry, we're leaving Target right as it is. But there's opportunity here. Like if you look to the north side behind the mall adjacent to Target, there's a lot of land. I'm guessing people don't even know is back there. And so what we've done is we've illustrated, currently this is 48 acres. It's actually producing a lot of tax revenue, $17.4 million. That's pretty good bang for your buck. There's an opportunity to significantly increase that while still providing for the same amount of retail or more, creating more local jobs, and also creating up to 1,600 additional housing units if Ashtamo Township says that that's a priority. And the idea here is this can be phased. This is supposed to play out in phases, but my little GIF isn't working. So again, what you can see here is the change in taxable value over time by jurisdiction. We go from the current mall is already producing a lot of revenue per infrastructure ratio. The new model increases that sixfold. And again, you all have created the tools to help make those housing options attainable or affordable depending on the priorities of the township. All right, the last one, this is a little more tame, right? We're not as aggressive with our development approach on this one. These are 2 single-family residential lots in the city of Portage that we said, what if we supported a little cottage courtyard? Green space in the middle, parking off to the side. Instead of 2 single-family homes, we could support 17 households. Again, it generates $2.6 million in tax revenue compared to if we built 2 single-family homes, it'd probably be about $400,000, $500,000 in tax revenue. So there's a lot of opportunity in these kinds of neighborhoods to support these things. But one of the things that's important is on these corridors, what we've identified is a lot of these are placeless places. They're places that have been designed to drive through. And so they're not super attractive to claim, oh, you know, my address is West Edge Avenue. And it's in a place that most people are kind of going to the drive-through fast food and then they're getting out of there. And so part of what we want to be doing is creating environments that allow people to walk around and have that be a safe, dignified, maybe even enjoyable experience. Because as you were talking about childcare earlier, that tends to be one of the top 3 expenses in every household budget. The other 2 are housing and transportation, right? So if we take housing, transportation, and childcare together, that generally accounts for about 75% of a family's budget. If we're creating opportunities for a family to say, you know what, this year we're going to try to become a 1-car household, we tend to be able to save that family $10,000 a year. And if they can invest it in housing or childcare or something else, it creates significant opportunity for economic mobility. So prior to 1950, we built places for people that also accommodated cars. Post 1950, we generally built places that were only designed for cars. We just assumed everybody's going to get around by car only all the time. I've got 2 teenage boys. They are going mad right now because neither of them have cars and they are trapped, right? They can't go anywhere unless I or my mom drives them around because we don't live in an environment that makes it easy for them to go be free, right? Same for my parents are in their 80s. They don't love driving anymore. They're still relatively physical fit. They don't have a lot of opportunities to walk around either. And so the more we create places that are tied to our residents and connected in proximity to the things that we really want to be close to and allow us to choose. Am I going to get in the car for this trip or am I going to walk, right? Am I going to hop on a bike or am I going to get in the car? When those options are available, people start to choose, I'm going to do the thing that's healthier or that gives me 10 minutes of exercise or that just lets me get some fresh air for a little bit. It doesn't have to be an economic choice. It can be recreational. It can be spiritual. And so we want to create some places to be while also recognizing that some places have to continue to be places that we drive through. So the quick takeaways are creating streetscapes that allow people to have a residential address that they're proud of, that's dignified, allowing for that soft density that's enjoyable, that allows people to sit outside, maybe have a meal. They can walk back upstairs into their condo or their apartment. These are the types of places that people really love being in, and we tend to pay a lot of money to go on vacation in, but then forget, oh, we have the ability to build those back home where we live. Creating spaces that accommodate 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds tend to accommodate the rest of us pretty well also. Recognizing that every single time we've tried to expand a road in order to relieve congestion, what tends to happen is we fill up that lane with more traffic. Almost all the time, eventually that extra lane gets full of more traffic. And we're consuming a whole lot of land with surface parking that isn't generating tax revenue, but is creating issues for stormwater management. It's creating urban heat island effects. It's separating land uses significantly. So the more parking we build, the harder it gets to walk because you have to walk through all of these empty parking lots. And then lastly, when we design for choices, we give more people expendable income, right? We give more people the option to choose. Am I going to drive or am I going to walk? Am I going to buy my kid a car or am I going to say, I walked to school when I was a kid, you can walk to school? Creating those options allows us to recognize that infrastructure invites behavior. And the more we're able to invest in those things, the better our communities become, the healthier they get. So lastly, going forward, what we want is for local communities to feel empowered by this, not obligated by it, right? So if a local community says, thanks for doing the study, we're not interested, that's fine. What we hope is that of all of the 17,000 acres that we identified in the study, that local communities can pick one place each, that they can say, well, you got 90% of this stuff wrong and we don't like it very much, but you got 1% or 4% or 10% right, and we like that. And we want to make some investments there in partnership with the county. We want to think about what incentives we can leverage. We want to think about the millage and how we use that. And if they're willing to do that, then we've got a toolkit to help them execute, right? To go from that more kind of strip suburban commercial pattern that doesn't generate a lot of revenue to a more walkable, amenity-rich, place-based neighborhood. So this toolkit will walk local communities through what that process looks like. You've got a stellar staff here at the county that can help to support local communities in that decision-making process. And we hope that the more each local community decides to do this once, the more they feel like, oh, actually, this feels pretty good. We love working with the county. We want to partner again on another site, and we've got some developers who are interested. So none of this happens overnight. This is a long game. Right? I'm not going to pretend that in the next 2 years, you're going to see transformation across 56 corridors. What we hope is over the next 2 years, you've got at least 2 sites that are actively in redevelopment using the tools that you've created and leveraging what we've identified in the corridor study, because there's so much opportunity in Kalamazoo County and there's so much good investment in high quality infrastructure. It would be a shame to let it go to waste. So I'm happy to take any questions or sit back down quietly.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Very informative. I'm going to go to Commissioner Gissler and then I'll come back to Vice Chair.
Thanks, Chair. 2 questions. One, Ryan, I know I've seen your presentation before, either to the supervisors or to the road commission, and I can't find your slides anywhere in my machinery.
Oh.
I know it's there.
Oh.
Because you said you were going to be happy to send it to us. Could you put it out again and
Yes.
let us take another peek at it?
Absolutely. And you'll also be getting a PDF report that's got more text.
Okay.
So we're doing a narrative report that you can read through. It'll be 22 pages. So robust, but not overwhelming. But you'll also get these slides.
And my second question is, do you have any intimate knowledge of the developer that's working at Center and Portage Road, taking what used to be a bank forever and turning it into, I think it was 151 apartments and 154 parking spaces. And that was one of the first things that caught my eye. I thought, how can you do that if you got 2-car families? Well,
Yeah,
you kind of answered that.
that's right. Yeah, a lot of households are single adults, or you can have a 2-adult household where they're trying to get by with just 1 car. Yeah, and we're seeing that more and more. There was a long time there where even banks would say, hey, we're not going to underwrite this project if you don't have 2 cars because we don't think you're going to lease up. But more and more, we're seeing examples of those kinds of properties leasing up just fine with 1 space per residential unit.
And with respect to that development, they've got fast food right across Center Street and they've got Latitude 42 right behind it.
Oh, sure.
How can you go wrong with that?
Vice Chair.
They can always come over and talk to their commissioner, because I live right there. Yeah. Question, and I probably, this is probably more appropriate question for the Upjohn Institute, but you might be able to answer it. The 75 households that are 75 houses, new houses that we need by 2030, is that anticipating roughly a 20,000 population increase in the next 6 years? I mean,
it is a question for the Upjohn Institute. So generally what we're seeing right now is about 2.4 people per household.
okay.
So if the other important aspect of this is we have a lot of households across the state, including in Kalamazoo County, where we have households that are doubled up, right? So the people already live here, but they're sharing 1 house instead of probably they should be living in 2 different housing units.
Okay.
Right. And so you can think about this in a few ways. Sometimes it's 2 families that are doubled up in 1 house. oftentimes it's young adults that have sort of failed to launch, right? And so you've got 26-year-old and a 28-year-old that still live at home with mom and dad because rent is too expensive. There's not enough out there available for them. And so they already live here. It's just that there isn't a unit available to them in their price point in a location that they're excited about. It's easier to live with mom and dad. But the minute something attractive and attainable becomes available, they're out, right? They're ready to move out of mom and dad's place. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to grow by that significant population. It does mean there's a lot of latent demand in the county. And then the last element of this is you've got a number of folks who currently live outside of the county but commute in because they work in the county. And there's a small share of those, I would guess probably 8 to 10%. Again, a better question for Upjohn. A small share would say, you know what, if there was something closer to where I work and in a decent school district or close to the thing that I want to be close to, I might move into Kalamazoo County. But until that's available, I'm going to continue to commute from Berrien County or Ionia County or whatever is that they live.
Okay, so the 7,500 new housing units needed in the next 4 years or so, that's not an increase in population. A portion of it may be, but a portion of it is probably people that are currently living into the county.
Yep.
Okay, and then I got two more quick questions. Actually, maybe three more. We talked about the taxable value, and that I think that's a great incentive for local units that are looking at the 5 and 10 year budget projections. But a lot of these units are wrapped into a brownfield plan, or that becomes part of their capital stack.
Yep.
That limits their ability for that taxable growth, does it not? Or you have to wait 20 years before the municipalities actually receive it. Most of it is given back to the developer, correct?
Yeah, so it depends on how the local unit of government structures their reimbursement agreement. But yes, there are definitely going to be instances where in order to instigate or incentivize the development, a brownfield agreement is put in place. That new tax revenue gets captured for a specified number of years. Could be 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I think one of the things that's important to acknowledge is on these corridors, that infrastructure is already there, right? So that means current taxpayers are paying for the infrastructure that's already there. If we have to give up 20 years of tax increment, right? New tax revenue that's created as a result of development. But we know at the end of that 20 years, we're going to have 5, 6, 10, $17 million of additional revenue. That infrastructure is getting paid for one way or another, right? And the alternative is no additional revenue gets created on the site. So yes, they may have to forego some of that revenue for a period of time, but more than likely over the length of the development and the lifespan of the infrastructure, we're generating significantly more revenue over time.
And that gets to the point of you got to be very careful when you create these incentives to make sure that it makes sense for both parties to, one, get the job done, and then two, to make sure that you have the revenue as a local unit to be able to continue to do more.
Yes.
My last question, the 7,500 by 2030, going back to that again, looking at the number of new builds that we've done, even with our housing millage, that's, I hate to say it, but that's just impossible.
Yep.
It's not going to happen. How do we look at what is a realistic expectation of what we can do, and how do we make that more efficient? In that you alluded to, the townships and the cities, they have all the zoning power, they have all the ability. What we have at the county is a carrot, basically. We don't have sticks, we have carrots.
That's right.
How do we utilize our carrots to make more compliance, to get closer to that 7,500, knowing that we're never going to hit 7,500 new homes built in the next 4 years? Certainly even with the subsidization of the housing millage, it just won't happen. But maybe we say 2,000 or 2,500 that we want to build, or we need to build. What are the tools that we can use? That's probably a Mary Balkema question. But how do we utilize that carrot the most efficient and most effective way possible to get? Because we're going to need township buy-ins in this, township zoning board buy-ins on this. And in order to get that township zoning board buy-in, I think would probably have to be some incentivization. Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud here, but
yeah, no, that's exactly the right question. And I think that's the intent of this study is to try to cast a vision for local units of government to see themselves in, or see a portion of their community in, and say, oh, somebody's been telling me to reform our zoning ordinance for the last 6 years, and we didn't like that idea. But seeing the tax revenue gains that are possible, seeing some of these other illustrations of neighborhood typology, understanding the difference in demographics, we hope some local communities will say, actually, this doesn't sound so bad, maybe in this one corner of the township or this part of the city that has been underinvested in for a really long time. I don't expect that townships that want to stay rural are going to say, great, let's develop everything. And we actually don't want that, right? But what we do want is for them to be a little bit inspired and say, tell me more, right? Invite somebody from Mary's team to come out and have a conversation about what could we do that's realistic in this season? How do we do it? I think the county has really great tools to offer support for the local communities that are ready to dig in. And it's not going to be every community all of a sudden shows up and says, okay, we're ready, give us all the stuff. It's going to happen in ones and twos. But frankly, that's probably easier for staff to manage over time.
And did we take these corridors and then overlap them or overlay them with current metro routes? To
Yes.
look at that?
In the process of identifying the corridors, we did look at the metro routes to make sure that they lined up.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I didn't get in my civic. Okay, wonderful. Because I was trying to follow you and I couldn't, and I was writing. Anyway, how many, it was about 7,500 units. How many of those are you looking for single family homes?
Oh, so the Upjohn Institute doesn't specify how many should be single family homes. What we've identified in the corridor opportunity plan is a wide range, right? So local units can decide, do we want all small lot single family or do we want some multifamily? I would suggest, based on demographic trends, that somewhere around 30% of the overall housing stock that's getting built across Kalamazoo County be something other than single family homes. But it's going to be up to local jurisdictions on a case by case basis.
So agreeing with Vice Chair, and we're gonna have to get some buy-in from cities and townships. When I'm looking at even at, I don't remember what the slide was, but the 75K, even at 30%, trying to afford $1,875 a month is a pinch,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so in my experience with some new homeowners, depending on where you live at, so let's say District 3, District 5, District 2, taxes are a little higher. And I don't think that's taken into account when people are looking at, you know, I make 75, I got 1875, I can afford this. But then, you know, even if the house was a homestead or we get these new single family units in the next couple cycles, you know, they're gonna get maxed out at that 5%.
Yep.
And I don't, in my experience, I haven't seen people's raises meet or match what taxes are looking like or home insurance. So I just want to, and I know all that's put into your mortgage, but I don't think a lot of conversation is around that. So I'm excited about it, but I'm thinking of it as a homeowner and for folks that are on my block who are like, do I sell? And if they go into these apartments, even at 75 and lower, because was it 30 to 75 that you were saying paying? I mean, somebody paying at $30,000 paying 1,800 is suicide.
Yep.
And so I just want us to think about when we put up these, you know, mini projects, I don't want it to turn into little ghettos either, or barrios in our language, so that only a certain subgroup is living here and it turns out like every other mini project that we've implemented in Kalamazoo. So I just, you know, want to have us focus on that and think of some resolve for folks that are getting pinched by taxes or those rising costs so they can be able to stay in a new beautiful home, even if it's a little subdivision.
Yeah. I just want to reaffirm what you just said in that we would strongly recommend that that local jurisdictions in partnership with the county are thinking about how to create mixed income neighborhoods, right? So that whenever we can, we're supporting low income housing alongside of market rate housing so that we're not creating neighborhoods that feels like, oh, that's the poor side of town, right? We want to create neighborhoods There's now so much research out of Harvard University. Raj Chetty in the Moving to Opportunity program has identified when kids grow up in neighborhoods where they see people at a number of different economic strata, they are so much more likely to progress economically over time because they've seen other adults in their neighborhood doing other things, right? And the world of opportunity opens up to them. And so if we're able to create neighborhoods where we can have low income housing, we can have middle income workforce housing, we can have market rate housing, and designed in a way that supports the local character, those are the opportunities that really move the needle. And so pairing your county incentives with a local incentive, a neighborhood enterprise zone is a good way to offset property taxes for a homeowner for a period of time, 10 to 15 years. Alongside of state and federal tools, you're going to have to use like every tool in the book in order to support some households, right? But if you can also leverage some of that market development, use the demand that's in the county to your advantage to create tax revenue that you can then leverage to support lower income households, you create a reinforcing positive feedback loop. It's not easy, right? I can say it all day long. It doesn't make it easy to do, but it is possible, and we're seeing it in other markets.
Thank you. I'm really grateful for the county housing team to help marshal through the collaboration with you and having the study completed on behalf of Kalamazoo County. One question I have is about that ancillary infrastructure. So like one of our delegated authorities is the road commission. They're serving lots of the rural communities in our townships. Some of that area is more urbanized township as well. And the way that infrastructure design occurs that makes places the drive through or the speed through places. What dialogue have you had or could be had with the road commission directly? They have sort of like a blanket street design metrics, and what can we do to help them sort of see other uses of road design as development is happening?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to speak too much to the road commission's priorities. We did provide this presentation to the Board of Commissioners at the Road Commission. I think it was well received. I think staff also appreciated it at the Road Commission. It's important to acknowledge that some streets have to remain streets that you drive through, right? Like we have to be able to move traffic quickly in some parts of town, and that's just kind of the end of it. In those places, normally what I would recommend is we reduce the number of curb cuts and driveways so that we're not slowing traffic down unnecessarily because everybody's trying to get into the McDonald's or the Burger King or whatever it is. It's like, no, this is a street that we drive through because we're going from one place to another. Places that we drive to, we want to be slowing down traffic. We want people to feel comfortable walking. And there's a whole toolkit. The National Association of Civil Transportation Engineers, it's the NACTO guide. And it's basically that same template that your road commission currently has, but designed for that strong sense of place. And so they can substitute the AASHTO guide with the NACTO guide on a case-by-case basis and say, oh, in this place, we want walkable, amenity-rich neighborhoods. And it might be this side street that comes off of the main arterial is going to be a nice place for people to live. The arterial is going to continue to be a highway because it has to be, right? And so and I think your staff is probably very astute and can identify where are the places that we have to drive through and where are the places that we want to drive to.
Thank you. And, seeing this presented to the township supervisors, I think it was encouraging to see the interest, the education that it provided, and just an opportunity through some of the examples that you share of just visioning, parts of the community a little bit differently. And, particularly the 2-family lot, like you could fit 17 homes there. You don't have to just change the whole, township or the whole community, but you can take little steps that can make a big difference. And hopefully we can continue to marshal that forward.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gisler.
Yes, I apologize. It's not a question for you, Ryan. It's a tag along behind on T's. I agree with everything you said about the 75 and how can they afford it? And yet we just spent some time listening to Jen talk about a potential tax increase. I think we need to realize that this is something that doesn't go away. And if we're going to increase the taxes, we're going to take it up to 80,000 rather than 70 or 75. So just to get my oar in the water on that one. I look for opportunities to agree with you on these.
Thank you, Commissioner Gissler. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you very much.
this.
Appreciate it.
Okay. All right, we'll go to item 7. Our other items, first, we're going to get an update on ARPA award and their status from Dr. Administrator Catlin.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Pro Tem, who is not here, so I don't know why I'm saying Vice Chair Pro Tem, but in spirit, I know that he's with us. And Commissioners, tonight, I will be brief. The information was in the packet, but wanted to just highlight a few items, and then I can certainly take questions. So as part of our ongoing review of ARPA project balances and spend down timelines, County Administration has identified internal and external projects where remaining funds are either no longer needed or their original purpose, or where programmatic needs have shifted. So in these instances, we're recommending reallocation of uncommitted balances to support countywide technology improvement initiative within this administration building and or somewhere at the landing place. And as you can see, even as tonight, we continue to be frustrated with the technology in this boardroom. So as I can kind of highlight some of these projects quickly, is Guidehouse is a remaining balance of $1,000, and it's not anticipated to be needed for continued financial advisory support. We have the Emergency Employee Relief Fund. So after initial seeding and usage, a remaining balance is available there. So we recommend reallocating the unused portion to support internal county needs. There's an admin building safety upgrades. The project was largely achieved its intended purchase or purpose rather, and the remaining balance can be redirected to support broader, more comprehensive technology upgrades. The planning and development infrastructure plan, the city of Parchment secured a state grant to fund their infrastructure work, leaving the ARPA allocation available for reassignment. There are 2 sheriff's office balances that remain unencumbered. So a portion of the recruitment incentive is unencumbered, and then the Sheriff Academy support can also be reallocated. The Sheriff's Office wanted to remind the board that they did request about $70,000 of those dollars to shift towards an ISK professional to support the jail. So they're asking that a portion of those dollars do go back to them to support an ISK position in a contract. For an external project, there's a Selenon Park Maple Grove broadband project that was completed. So there's a remaining balance of around $12,000 or so that can be reallocated. So across these projects, we're recommending that the board obligate the reallocated funding toward a coordinated technology enhancement initiative to focus on county boardroom and conference rooms within the administration building or in support of the landing place. And so speaking to a little bit, I had a conversation with Commissioner Gissler about some of the operational goals associated with improved technology over the weekend. And so first, this would establish, if we were to replace equipment within this boardroom and technology within the conference rooms, it would establish a consistent countywide IT standard for meeting spaces. Currently, the equipment within these various rooms have created inconsistencies in performance for staff and IT. So standardization will allow us and staff to focus on reliable, familiar technology regardless of location. Secondly, the upgrades would significantly improve communication capability. So enhanced audio and visual systems will strengthen internal meetings, hybrid presentation, and public engagement during board and committee sessions. And third, the improvements will support accessibility. As part of the upgrade, we intend to incorporate technology to support better ADA accommodations, particularly hearing assistance capability for individuals who rely on hearing aids and/or those devices. And then finally, the equipment would be selected with agility in mind. These systems will be modular and portable so that they can be relocated and integrated into the newly constructed administration building when that comes to fruition and is completed. So those are really our recommendations. And then lastly, I will highlight one item that is within the external category within the ARPA spreadsheet there, and it's related to gun violence. So I have conferred with the city of Kalamazoo quite a while ago, actually, sometime in, I believe it was last year. And what they do, they have on staff a crime analyst who partners with the W.E. Upjohn Institute to sort of collate some of the data related to gun violence, just in general within the city of Kalamazoo. Within that partnership, they also partner with the Michigan Transportation Collective. They compile those reports on their webpage as they monitor and manage the Blueprint for Peace. So one of the ideas for that $200,000 balance could be to support, and I've already spoken to the sheriff via email. I have a meeting with them tomorrow about something not related, but we're going to talk about this as well, is to support a crime analyst position. This would be able to leverage some of that ARPA balance to support that going forward this year as they kind of gear up in implementation of their RMS and JMS systems. And then also it would allow for them to partner then with the W.E. Upjohn Institute to sort of collate that data and make it more transparent to the public. So that balance could potentially be used for that, and that would the recommendation when the gun violence subcommittee of the board met back in 2024, I believe. So I'm happy to take any questions about any of the content presented.
Follow up on the crime analyst position. So it would continue to advocate for the open data transparency effort. This could potentially help to facilitate that forward, but have we clarified if the collaboration with Upjohn has additional cost? Is this ARPA resources needed to bring them into the collaboration rather than the analyst position, or I want to fund an analyst position and then not be able to get Upjohn involved with the data?
It's a great question, Chair. So my understanding from the city of Kalamazoo is that the individual they work with at the Upjohn Institute is funded through a grant currently from the city of Kalamazoo, and it expires the end of this year. So they would be looking for partnerships, likely with the county, if the county were to entertain it, to support that endeavor moving forward. So my thought is that there's roughly around $100,000 going into that position now to support city of Kalamazoo. I don't know if they could take on all of the county without hiring another position. We haven't had those conversations yet, but if they were able to, perhaps the city and the county could split that 100,000 or so moving forward, unless they have to support a new position, which would be another $100,000 essentially. But I know that for sure that the city of Kalamazoo is looking to partner, at least, or desiring to partner with other agencies to support crime statistics in relation to gun violence.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain when we have additional discussion here, I mean, this kind of got under the radar a little while, but I think we're going to hear from Upjohn that the capacity as is sort of utilized. And so to do additional data work, I think we are going to hear communication. They need more staff. So I'd like to hear a little bit about what that would cost so we can figure out what makes sense. Do we have any other questions? Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you very much. Really quick, how much of this, you didn't get a dollar amount, how much would we reallocate to coordinated tech, and how much would we reallocate to the landing place? It just.
It's not like someone's mic is on. Thank you, Vice Chair. So Chair and Commissioners, so the amount is in the, I don't have it up, but we aren't recommending necessarily amount to support each. It's really up to the board. I believe it's a little over $400,000 is available to reallocate. These numbers are as of December 31st, 2025. So they're not necessarily totally accurate, but they're not far off. If that makes any sense. But let me just open up this spreadsheet here. So it looks like we have, as of 2025, December 31st, $458,000. I would anticipate without, and we hate to give numbers, but this project initially, when we place new equipment in this boardroom before my tenure, I will not take responsibility for this equipment in here. I just won't. So before my tenure, they paid roughly $100,000, and that was supported through ARPA. I would anticipate with the equipment that we need and it'll be expensive, especially with the hearing aid devices, probably upwards $350,000. So.
Okay, and then I had a couple of questions and I went through the funds that you have. One was the List Kalamazoo. Well, first we'll start with, most of these were awarded 4 years ago, right? 3-4 years ago. Okay, so the List Kalamazoo Small Business has 668,000 on it. I wasn't on the board when we allocated that, so it must have been at least 4 years ago. They have plans of spending that for what their original I guess I have a hard time believing that they put in a grant for $700,000 or $800,000. They haven't spent any of it, and they plan on spending it now, 3.5 years later, and it'll be the same amount.
So yes, so thank you, Chair. So Vice Chair and Commissioners, so yes, that's a great question. All of these projects, I actually received emails back from everyone, so I do have an answer for this. So they did go through leadership change at LISC. What I am told, though, is that from the new executive director, that the balance of $611,000 has been fully committed. It's just not spent yet, but mostly to Northern Initiatives, and that's kind of their broker to work with the small businesses. So they're going to be administering the grants from that 611,000 to support those small businesses. And they believe that they are completely on track to spend the balance before the end of the year and or the agreement expires. So that's what they informed me on February 3rd.
Okay, do we know what their original agreement said, how they would spend it on small business? Were there any requirements on it? I mean, like, for instance, Health and Human Services, we gave them an award of, I'm coming up here, for health software. We gave them an award of $145,000. They've spent $136,990. There's $8,000 left. Were they planning 4 years ago that they would spend $136,000 for the software that they wanted the agreement for, and then there would be an $8,000 bill 3.5 months later? It just seems to me that any unused spent money that they originally had the contract for, they're coming up with new reasons or new things that fit somewhat, maybe loosely, the criteria of the original grant. I guess I would probably take a peek, and this is probably a Lou question, on some of these, the original grant and intention of when we allocated those ARPA dollars for, are they using the remaining dollars that once they finish their project, they have X amount of dollars left, they're coming up with new ways to spend it?
No, I mean, Chair, so Vice Chair, no. I mean, all of these projects, and as I detailed in the narratives, they're all responsive to their original purpose for the grant. So, for example, their original intent was to support small business relief 0% interest loan program. And it would expand LISC's geographic footprint for small businesses investment, and will consist of 0% interest loans and grant dollars to be invested into borrowers to keep small businesses open and functioning in Kalamazoo County during the COVID-19 recovery period. So, and the recovery period is all, it extends through December 31st of this year. So, I mean, it's definitely responsive. With regard to the HCS item that you mentioned for their program, they did complete their program. What they're endeavoring and what they desire to do is include more data in that. And so if the board is amenable to it, they would like to continue because there are extra dollars. I mean, when these numbers were estimated in 2022, that's what they were estimates. So the program came under budget, but now they have capacity, they see, to do more with it within that same structure. So if the board doesn't want to support that, though, and reallocate, they're more than able to do so.
And yeah, I guess I appreciate that answer, because I think that's the correct answer. And I'm speaking as only one commissioner here, but my feeling was 3-4 years ago when these things were doled out, they weren't blank checks to organizations to use how they want. Once they finish their project, they can do whatever they want afterwards. It should be, once they say what they are intended to do with those dollars should be returned to the county, and then we figure out how we best spend it. That's my 2 cents on that. But I mean, we're not talking large amounts of money here. We're talking $10,000 here, $20,000 here. Some of them are big ones, like the Alcott indoor renovation. We allocated 4 years ago $855,000 They've spent 389. There's $465,000 left that according to the federal government, they have 8 months to spend or we have to give it back to the feds. So, I mean, at some point, we've got to say enough is enough to a lot. I know we did something for Alamo Roads, and I think that was in the same vein. But at some point, we have to say enough is enough. And these aren't blank checks, but these are checks so that you can achieve a project. And then we have to reallocate those dollars.
Yeah, thank you. And Vice Chair, I just want to clarify for the community, we're, all the allocations awarded to internal and external departments are done so through a specific contract with guide. There's no blank checks written with the resources. So they're within the scope of the contract for items where they've come in under budget. They've made a communication back to administration, but all of the resources also were assumed as replacement reserves. So we want to be diligent, make sure that we're having, good accounting for the expenditures and to deploy them in other ways if needed. But I'm going to let Administrator respond, then we'll go to Commissioner Morales.
I appreciate it, Sharon. I'll be brief. I just wanted to remind the board. So there are two attachments. One is an Excel spreadsheet. The other one is it contains narratives. Not all of the balances shown are available. So for example, the Alcott indoor renovations I wrote in there, they have a significant portion of those funding of those funds rather encumbered. Only approximately 30,000 remains unencumbered. So a lot of these projects, the funds are already directed towards something. They just it's a scheduling thing with renovations. They have to work with contractors and that sort of thing. So I just want to remind you that those narratives are there for awareness.
Thank you, Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Chair. I think he kind of answered my question, but say we do get some funding back. I think it would be wise if the money has to be spent in the next 8 months that we already have a plan on where we're allocating them to. So we're not fizzling around for some things. I think that's all I have. I think you answered was that just for Alcott you were talking about, or was that for other entities as well?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Commissioner Morales, yes, that's for all. So I've included narratives for every project that has funding available. So within that, it's multiple agencies, and a lot of times you'll see that there looks like there's a big balance. So even for LISC, for example, there's a big balance, but they've informed me that the funding is encumbered, so they plan on spending it within the time frame.
So with Vice Chair's question to the 800K, have we reached out to them and they reached back? I don't know if I heard that. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ray.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to say I agree with Vice Chair and recommend that we follow up with LISC maybe a month, 2 months, because this has been a long time coming with that $600,000. And then the question about the sheriff, when you said he had a request for 72,000 for ISK person in the jail, where was that?
I think I don't know why it's doing that. That's new. So, well, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Commissioner Ray, yes. So the question regarding the 70,000, so they submitted a request a while back. So they said that they sought consideration to utilize a portion of the funds to support an ISK clinical staff position within the jail. Currently, they indicate that there are no ISK clinical staff available on the weekends or holidays just to assist with their special needs inmate population. So approximately 70,000 would be required to fund this need. Additional details can be provided and a letter of support also by the ISK Clinical Staff Director, Lindsay O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. So just to follow up, so the previous request was granted or was it denied?
Correct. Yeah, it was not granted. It was denied. So, and they were trying to leverage additional or leftover remaining dollars from their recruitment incentive and academy support accounts within ARPA.
Okay, and then one question, I think, I feel like I forgot it. I had a clarifying question. Oh, so the $30,000, that is unencumbered from the indoor. Let me look it up. I've been scrolling. All the indoor, renovations, is that included in the $458,000?
It is not. So my understanding from Deputy Administrator Smith is that they plan to fully utilize the balance, including that 30,000, no later than fall of 2026 this year.
So is the $30,000 gonna be spent on something else or the same project?
Nope. So we're just trying to be transparent that there's an unencumbered amount there, but they plan on spending it on the project. So it's just an interest of transparency. We're just letting you know if the board wants to reallocate some of the funds, it is totally at the discretion of the board at this point.
Yeah, it just means they don't have an invoice marked to it yet. Commissioner Morales?
Yeah, I was on that same page, like, the 30,000 is being spent on what it was allocated for? Okay. Sugar. Oh, the sheriff's position, so ARPA is covering this, how are they gonna sustain it? Oh,
Thank you, Commissioner. So to answer your question, yeah, that would it would have to be sustained somehow through the law enforcement fund or general fund in 2027. So excellent question. This is one-time money, so it would have to be sustained later on.
You know, I will just add to that and maybe this is a follow-up question, and we have a letter of support from ISK, but is it really only a resourcing barrier, or is there a lack of, you know, would ISK be otherwise staffing this if there were clinicians available?
Chair, no, my understanding is that they have the clinicians available. They don't have the funding to support it. So that's why the sheriff's office has to redirect some of their balance to support the clinical staff. But then beyond that, when 2027 and forward, we would have to find funds available within the budget to support.
Sorry. So, I mean, I would just advocate, I know, you know, because of system issues, we have a very high percentage of mental health population within the jail, and having clinical staff available to support them, even if it is, you know, not identified how that is sustainable, it does provide at least short-term benefit. Folks like that shouldn't be populating the jail as extensively as they are, but they do. So they need help. Vice Chair and then Commissioner Gisler.
Yeah, to follow up on what Commissioner Morales said, I completely agree. And the administration is doing that. They've identified two sources, technology for this room and furniture at the landing place. That's where I think we should shift whatever dollars. Now, my qualms come from I have a sneaking suspicion that the money allocated 4.5 years ago, or 4 years ago, for a lot of these projects, they're now coming up with ways to spend it and being very creative of it still fitting within the contract. And that would be a Lou question. And there's no way you can answer it now, but it would probably take some work on it. But are these new projects or these new allocations, the 8,000 here or the 465 here, were they part of the original request that was given to the Board of Commissioners 3 years ago saying we need this dollars for this? Them having the ability to change it after they've completed the project, it came in under budget, doesn't necessarily mean that they keep that money and then they can spend it on something similar to what their original contract was. That, in my mind, is a big check. That's where we have to move forward on and make sure that they're following the original contract.
I think we're in alignment there. I see council would like to weigh in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, and I'm going to say that they find ways to satisfy the program, new ways to use it, but it still has to come back to you for approval. before they can do that. For instance, and I'm just going to say, if I had a program where I was educating boys on something and I used it all, had it, and I said, well, I can do the same thing for girls, I would have to come back to ask you, but it's still in that same vein where they're going to get that same type of education, but now I'm focusing on girls instead, but they would still need your approval to do that. But it should be within that same purpose that they applied for originally, but you would still have to approve that. Thank you.
Yep, so same intent and still subjected to board final approval. Vice Chair.
My question would be, would that approval be in a contract or would that be on the claims list?
That would be something I would have to look up. That's beyond me right now. Thank you.
Administrator.
Thank you, Chair. So, and Commissioners, Vice Chair, to answer your question, I'm very particular about this. So any purpose that any department, whether it's elected, the courts and or administrative departments, if it does not jive with the original purpose, I always shift it to the board for approval. We've never slid anything through the claims list. We will not do that. And these are dollar amounts, 2,000, 25. I don't let anything that does not align with the original intent of that ARPA grant agreement goes back to the board for approval. And we've done this for departments like the 8th District Court. They had funding left over back in 2024. They needed to shift and the board approved that. There are other departments that had similar cases where we've said, I'm not making that decision in administration. We kick it to the board and it goes on a board agenda on non-consent and or consent. It just depends on the item and what board leadership wants to entertain. So, but yeah, anything that does not align with their original purpose will come back to the board for approval.
Thank you. And we see administration demonstrating that over and over. So Commissioner Kistler.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to, for my own benefit, if nobody else's, put what I see in that spreadsheet with the colored lines and that sort of thing into perspective. We've got basically $7.5 million that has not yet, by the time you get all the external and internal, it has not been spent. And we've got 8 months to spend it, which means write checks. You can't sign a contract that extends into next year with half that money because you're going to lose that half. It's got to be spent out of our hands by the end of the year. That makes me feel very uneasy that we're sitting here. If only 10% of that $7.5 million turns out to not be done, everybody's playing games with us and you know, blowing smoke at you because you're hammering them to know what is going to happen. If 10% of that's, you know, up in smoke, that's $750,000. That's serious money. And that'll do a hell of a job of fixing this, I think. And we also would, if we're going to do, you know, I agree that we need to do something about the technology in this room, but can we do it if we started right now? I mean, it's got to be done. You can't have guys on ladders still pulling cable and that sort of stuff. I feel it very uncomfortable about the time that we have left to do things constructively.
Thank you, Commissioner Kistler. I'll just add, and then to Commissioner Morales, administration has been, we review these on a semi-frequent basis at board leadership. He's been following up with the vendors, and we're coming back here to a full board discussion because there's seen now the time needed to reallocate some of those funds. So administration is working to be very proactive so we avoid just what you're worried about. Commissioner Morales.
So question, money came to us, we were able to get folks to fill these applications out that are approved. Knowing that we have 8 months, is there a hard deadline we can give them to provide to us? Say by July 1, we need to know what you're doing and if it's going to be done by November or October, because then if we allocate whatever is left back, how are we going to get things fixed, to your point, Commissioner Gisler, in time for December? And I mean, I remember talking about this last year about these funds having to be spent. So I'm worried about that too. And some of the pushback that some of different organizations got because they weren't, quote unquote, in alignment or couldn't spend their money fast enough, that felt forced to give their money back. Like, I really want some communication to go out to whoever is in this 750K. Like, I want you to be all over their head, on top of it. And I want us to decide on hard deadlines so that we're not scrambling in October through December and have to give this crazy state right now that money back.
Thank you, Commissioner Morales. One more clarifying question. All of the ARPA funds, we've allocated them as revenue replacement. And so funding that is not expended by the awardees here comes back to the county, and we don't have to have the dollars spent directly. They're already assumed as revenue replacement. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Although it is still because of, I'll just say bluntly, the shenanigans that I've been seeing from the federal government in terms of the ARPA final rule. I would highly recommend that the board actually spend them on something tangible this year and not just like put it into fund balance, just to be just on the up and up.
So I think there's alignment with Commissioner Morales's recommendation for a sort of that hard deadline, a couple of months out, and administration will keep on top of that for us. Okay. Commissioner Ray?
Well, I was just gonna suggest we set a deadline. And if we didn't have the money spent, we just send it back. I was thinking like June 1st, like we gotta stop playing, especially with Liz. It's ridiculous.
Administrator?
Yeah, so I think that could work, but in some cases, like for example, the Alcott renovations, so that fund, a majority of that funding is encumbered because it's renovations construction. So okay, yeah. So as long as the funding is encumbered, then okay. I just wanted to make sure I clarified that piece of it, but okay.
Okay. Robust discussion. Thank you, everybody. All right, let's move to the next 2026 MEC Legislative Conference. It's occurring April 27th and 9th. Administration just wants to know if we have interest from commissioners in attendance so they can get us signed up. Lansing. It's in Lansing. Vice Chair?
I'm gonna be there, and I would encourage commissioners, if you can, to attend. It's the one in Lansing, I think it's a little bit better than the one in up in Traverse City, because it's more nerdy, more informative, more policy driven. But that one's got more meat to it.
I've already communicated I would be interested in attending. I don't need accommodations though. And Commissioner Morales? She needs all the accommodations. Okay. All right, with that, we're gonna go to first reading. Discussion of resolution establishing creation of the 440 North Church Street Parking Garage Public Art Ad Hoc Committee. Whoever thought of that name gets extra points. We're gonna move that at the regular business meeting. This is just on the cow so that we're touching on it here and then there. So Commissioner Ray?
Just a question on the resolution. There are a couple blank spots. Do we need to fill them in at the first reading or we fill them in the second time?
We can have discussion about that now, so it's prepared when we vote this evening. So we're looking to identify the number of commissioners who want to participate and then the number of community representatives that we have participated if we want them to. I have folks who are interested. Commissioner Morales.
That's what I was gonna ask. Did you get a list of community partners who wanted to engage?
Yeah, so, and I think we could have some additional dialogue on that as well, but I have heard from Commissioner Ray and Morales interest. I have interest. I don't know if there are other commissioners. And then we have Pam Rowland from Junior Girls. We also have Jonathan Yarwara from NACD. Ed Genesis is not able to participate at the dates and times, but we'll be providing garnering community input. What was that? We did not connect with one another. So, but we can include a place for them. Yeah. Really, the resolution just stipulates the number of community voices. Yeah. Abby. Sorry, Chair Wheeler.
It's okay. Thank you, Chair. I would highly recommend getting involved with the Kalamazoo County Public Arts Commission on this. It's, I sit on the Public Arts Commission, and I'm very interested in this. They do fantastic work, and they have the ability to connect us with local artists, which I think is something that we would all be highly interested in.
Yeah, thank you. So, and just to clarify, the Arts Council and the Public Arts Commission are helping with the initial stage of the process. So Arts Council helped put together the request for proposal. Public Arts Commission also helped sort of look at the initial respondents. I think there were 35, narrowed them down to 15. Those folks have been asked to craft a design. They'll receive an initial payment for that. And then the Public Arts Commission will take those 15 and narrow them down to finalists, 3 to 5 designs. That will come to the ad hoc committee for final selection of the art. Vice Chair.
I was just gonna say, since Commissioner Wheeler serves on the Public's Arts, I hate to give you more meetings, but I've been doing that with ISK. I've been doing it with everything else.
I welcome any of the commissioners who'd like to participate. Okay. Any further questions? Okay. All right, with that, we are to close session. Council.
I do. I motion to enter closed session for an update and discussion related to the lease of site of the Asylum Lake Preserve pursuant to MCL 15.268D.
This motion made by Commissioner Wheeler, supported by Vice Chair Taylor. Any further discussion? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Pro Tem Hepler. Commissioner Mazer. Commissioner Morales.
Yes.
Commissioner Ray.
Yes.
Chair Stribbs.
Yes.
Vice Chair Taylor.
Yes.
Commissioner Wheeler.
Yes.
Commissioner DeLue.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gisler.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. We will move to closed session.
Now